All right, so let's begin by just imagining that right here, in the middle of the room, we have a pile of sand. Let's say there's going to be like 1 million grains of sand in this pile. So I think we can all agree that it will be a heap. Now, if I were to take a single grain of sand from the top of this pile, we can agree it's still going to be a heap. If I were to take a second grain from the top of this pile of sand, again, it will still be a heap. Now, if I kept taking grains of sand away and away from the pile, it will slowly shrink in size till eventually it's not going to become a heap. That's given. Like 1 grain of sand is not going to be a heap. So at some point, that pile of sand is going to transition from a heap to not a heap. This idea is known as Sorites Paradox. It was written first by Eubulides, an ancient Greek philosopher. But traditionally, this question, or this paradox, tackles the question of at what point does the heap turn into not a heap. However, I have a slightly different interpretation that focuses on the grains of sand themselves. Now, I focus on each grain of sand because although each one has substance, and each one represents some change of some degree, each single grain is so infinitesimally small that it makes no perceptible difference. Yet over time, the accumulation of each individual grain of sand transitions the entire object, changes the entire object from one form to another. Now this I'm going to explain further with another idea. It's an anecdote. So let's say that we were trying to boil a frog. Okay, it's kind of weird, but trust me, I'm not making this up. This is an actual thought experiment. Now, if I had this frog and I threw it straight into a pot of boiling water to try and cook it would realize the sharp contrast and change, and it would jump out of the pot. But if I put the frog into lukewarm water at first, it would sense no danger. And if I slowly turned up the heat, degree by degree, the frog would adapt because the change is so gradual, it wouldn't realize the change in its temperature until it's too late. This is called the boiling frog effect. But both of these ideas together while it's disputed whether frogs actually act this way, I can tell you for certain that humans act this way. Not exactly in water, but by not realizing small, gradual changes. I'm going to take as a first case homosexuality. Now, we as a human race have gone from a period in time where homosexuality was frowned upon, it was a criminal, it was sinful. But now we're at a point where it is accepted widely across the country. Taking UK as a case example, in 1533 they had the Buggery Act, which outlawed homosexuality, made it punishable by death. At this point in time, though, the UK is one of the most accepting nations in the world. But they didn't just wake up one day and decide to start accepting the LGBT community. Rather, it was a series of gradual, step-by-step changes that were imperceptible at the time, but amounted to this overall net change of the culture of the society. This can also be found in nature. Actually, it's incredibly apparent in nature. The theory of evolution is bounded on this belief that gradual, step-by-step changes result changing us from the dinosaurs to where we are today. Plate tectonics, has changed our world around us from Pangea, when the world was first created, to the continent structure we're familiar with today. And even though we can't realize it, the continents are still moving ever so slightly. We'll never be able to realize it, we won't be able to see it. But over a long period of time, there will be an obvious, perceptible change. The Grand Canyons were the effect of erosion, slow and steady, but over hundreds of millions of years, they carved out one of our most notable monuments. Now, most importantly, this can also be seen in the present. Looking at the case of surveillance, we've gone in the last decade from having very little surveillance to a point where now it's common throughout most of our life. This is, again, gradual. It started with one security camera at a time, one surveillance system at a time, until now we're at a point where we can hardly expect privacy in many places of our world. Which is how it is, but it was so slow that we as a human race didn't really realize it. Now, to conclude, grain by grain, our society and our world is changing. It's something we need to accept, but it's something that I'm not asking you guys to be afraid of it. Just because this is a change that we really can't see and we really can't avoid, you shouldn't try and cling to every little change that happens. Rather, I'm asking you to just be aware that every little change that you see is building up to something greater. That's the ultimate takeaway. Thank you.